Welcome to your weekday Cup of the Word. We're going to take a break from the Psalms and move over to the book of Lamentations. Now, it's kind of not taking a break from the Psalms because Lamentations is poetry. It is a psalm, but it is unlike any other psalm in all of the Bible, and it really is a large one. It's going to consist of 5 chapters, so it deserves its own piece, we might say. And so, as you look at Lamentations, we're going to do a little bit of intro and then we'll cover chapter 1 today. So it'll be a little bit of a longer daily cup because of that. Lamentations was written after the destruction of Jerusalem. In 586 BC, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came in and he destroyed Jerusalem. He laid waste to it, made it an uninhabited wasteland, destroyed the temple, took everything out of it and took it off to Babylon, and then took everybody who lived in the land, and except for the poorest and the weakest, carted them off to Babylon. He did the unthinkable because up until this point, the Jews had always seen that, well, God will protect us. In the end, God takes care of us. We'll never be destroyed. We're God's people. But the problem was they had turned their back on God, and that's why they were destroyed. They brought the destruction on themselves because in order to be God's people who are protected by God, you have to kind of have some loyalty to Him somewhere along the line, and they didn't have that. They were idolatrous. They served all the false gods. They had gotten to the point where they were putting idols to the false gods in God's temple, all sorts of horrific things. And so eventually Babylon comes in and destroys them. Well, Jeremiah, during this whole time, had been a prophet sent by God, and Jeremiah was constantly sent to them saying, change, change, change. Don't do this. Give your idols up and turn back to God and He'll save you. But if you don't, you're going to lose it all, guys. You're going to lose everything and you're going to be carted off in humiliation. And Jeremiah, well, in the end, Jeremiah saw that very thing happen. The very thing Jeremiah never wanted and begged the people to avoid was what he saw. He saw Babylon come in. He saw Nebuchadnezzar destroy the city. He saw all of Jerusalem laid waste. And Jeremiah pens Lamentations as a lament, a mourning of the city of Jerusalem. The city that fell, and it didn't have to. It was completely avoidable. If they'd just been faithful, at any point God could have easily turned the whole thing around, but they didn't. They didn't turn back to Him. And so Jeremiah writes this poetry of lament, of mourning over the city. And in this first chapter, he envisions the city like a princess. This beautiful princess of a city, finely clothed, and now turned to rags. A princess now wearing rags. The very streets and roads leading to Jerusalem mourn for all of the people that used to come up to the city for the feast and don't anymore. The city streets that used to be full of wedding parties and bustling markets are now empty and cold. There's no more laughter of youth in the city streets. There's no more happiness and joy. Everything about the city has been made dark and sad. And so this chapter pictures the city as itself, physically, if it had a voice, crying out and weeping, where have my people gone? And oh, what might have been. And now, all of that joy and the prosperity and all of those things are gone, and they've been replaced by people who are drug off into captivity, into slavery, and moved from a life where there were parties and happiness and joy and food to now food is scarce and humiliation is plentiful, where you have to beg for food each day. And so Jeremiah is mourning the loss of this beautiful city, not just because of the city physically itself, but because of what it represented and the people that he knew and had preached to who were now gone, and the fact that it just never had to happen. It didn't have to be this way if they'd only turned to God. But the moment that they turned away from God, God says, well, if you don't want me, I'll leave you to your own. And that country of Israel was easy pickings for larger nations when God's protection went away. That's your Daily Cup, and we'll see you tomorrow.